The agreement sets out that the agreement was signed by 3 parties, and excluding the district attorney's office, we have no idea why the district attorney did not sign this report. But it says that the city of Montgomery will order the following named officers to take polygraph tests, and it gives them 4 choices of people that they would allow to give them a polygraph test. And the officers are Grady Arnett, Wesley Strain, D.G. Johnston, Sergeant Bill Segrist, Detective Cecil Humphreys, Detective Thomas Lideker, Detective Richard Kerner, and Detective Charles Allen. And it says that the questions based on a polygraph test will deal only with the events involving the Whitehurst case. It says no questions other than these will be asked of the officers. The results of these tests will be made public. The agreement also says that if any of these officers refuse to take the polygraph test, he will be immediately discharged or retired. It says if any officer in taking the test is found to be lying, he will be immediately discharged or retired. The agreement further states that Colonel Ed Wright and Chief Charles Swindle of the Montgomery Police Department have volunteered to take the polygraph test on certain questions dealing with the Whitehurst case. The results of these tests will also be made public. The Attorney General will request at the Circuit Court of Montgomery County that all cases past, present, or future arising out of the Whitehurst case against Ronald Bush, Tommy Lideker, and Richard Kerner be null pros with prejudice, except that the cases could be brought again if either Kerner, Lideker refuse to take the test or take the test and fail it. Then they are not immediately discharged from the Montgomery Police Department. Let me clarify it again. The cases against Ron Bush, Tommy Lideker, and Richard Kerner would be null pros with prejudice, except that the cases could be brought again if Lideker or Kerner refuse to take the test, and they are not immediately discharged from the Montgomery Police Department upon refusing to take that test. It also says if any or all the officers mentioned take the polygraph test and pass it, then a public apology will be issued to the officers passing the test by the Attorney General. It should be pointed out that the grand jury says in its report that they've investigated in depth the allegations of wrongdoing by the district attorney in connection with his public office and while he's held public office, and that they heard testimony of numerous witnesses in connection with the investigation, and that they found no evidence to substantiate the allegations. They also go on to say that it seems that a present impasse between the district attorney's office and the Montgomery Police Department and city officials comes from a lack of understanding and a lack of communication between the public officials. The jury said that it deplored the situation as it exists today, and we assume that the agreement that we just read from was a result of the jury's findings over the past 8 days. We began hearing testimony involving the feud between the police department and the district attorney's office on January 10th. At this point, Bob, we have no idea as to why there was some apparently discontent over the grand jury's report. Several members of the district attorney's office were overheard to say that they didn't feel like the report was fair. We have not been able to see if the district attorney had any comment about the report. We will try to do that at a later time. This agreement apparently has been hammered out over the past week or two between the 3 parties. As most of you know, the mayor and council members, Council President Emory Farmer, have been back and forth in the grand jury room, and everybody wanted to know what was being said, of course, and what was being done. And apparently this agreement, the polygraph test, and the fact that if the officers pass the polygraph test, there will be a public apology by the Attorney General, and if they fail the test, they will be dismissed from the police department, and those who have the time will be retired. This apparently is the agreement that was hammered out in those many visits before the grand jury, the mayor, and members of the city council.
Well, of course, we were quite surprised that it would be a complete blanket amnesty, as so stated by my state commander of the American Legion. The stand of the American Legion has been and still is that each case should be on a case-by-case basis, and there should be no blanket amnesty for every individual as such, and each one of them would be taken up individually through the proper process, has always been the policy and the tradition and in the best keeping of the United States of America. We feel that a blanket amnesty would certainly deter our possibility of a strong military organization in years to come.
Tax collector's office from time to time, as they might need it, and also you represent it in a minor way the public office.
Yes,
A little bit.
just
When you needed a
individual item anyway, would you not? So, I mean, we could just refuse to do that.
Clerical supplies, what I was telling them, that I didn't want to order 900,000 pieces of state. How long are we talking about before they finally get all the equipment moved in? What do you think?
But I don't think this approach that the sheriff is suggesting is the right approach, because we're gonna have the worst of two worlds instead of the best of two worlds.
Well, when are you gonna bite the bullet though, Bill? This is a piecemeal approach that he's,
That's what I'm saying.
in other words, what if somebody else comes up with the same thing? We're gonna gradually get into everybody sending us bills, these different ones hire legal counsel, and each one we've sent
All right,
bills and bills.
somewhere we
and we
have got
don't
to
have it
have
in the budget, and we done blowed $35,000, $40,000 on legal fees before we know it.
This is right. This is why I'm saying that somehow we've got to get at least a handle on what we are talking about this year as far as cost. If we do it this way, what are we talking about? If we go the route of trying to hire a full-time attorney, what are we talking about? And if we hire a full-time attorney, what happens if we hire a full-time attorney? Then when a case like this comes up, is that going to be sufficient? Or are we still going to have to go outside of the full-time attorney and hire somebody? I mean, these questions, I'm not qualified to really answer. I don't know.
Colonel's upstairs, and he said to get somebody at the courtroom full.
Mr. Collins, are you satisfied with the restraining order that the judge issued a few minutes ago?
I think this is what the city needs at this time.
Why did you bring the suit in the beginning?
As a taxpayer, I felt like I was being ripped off by paying both the defense and the prosecution on this criminal charge.
What are your feelings, ma'am?
Well, pretty much the same. I felt like it was really wrong to pay, you know, for private attorneys for something that could not really be considered, you know, in the line of duty. Perjury is a private crime. It can't be considered anything else, and I just thought it was wrong to pay a private attorney to defend them for that.
After a combined total of 8 days of hearing testimony from numerous witnesses, including Mayor Jim Robinson and members of the City Council, the grand jury today made its report to Judge William Thetford about the controversy existing between the DA's office and the City Police Department. Included in the jury's report is a 3-page agreement signed by Mayor Jim Robinson, City Council President Emery Farmer, and Attorney General Bill Baxley. The agreement says that 8 city police officers should take a polygraph test dealing with events involving the Bernard Whitehurst case. It says that the city of Montgomery should order these men to do this. If the officers refuse to take the test, they will be fired or retired. Colonel Ed Wright, Montgomery Public Safety Director, and Police Chief Charles Swindle have volunteered to take the test, the report says, and answer certain questions about the Whitehurst case. The agreement goes on that the Attorney General will request that any cases, past, present, or future, in connection with the Whitehurst case be null pros against Ronald Bush, Thomas Lideker, and Richard Kerner. The agreement also says that the cases will be null pros only if the men take the polygraph test, or that they take the test and fail, and the city refuses to discharge them or make them retire. The Montgomery County District Attorney's Office, his staff, has said that they will volunteer to take a polygraph test, and the grand jury asked that a liaison officer be appointed by the mayor to be a contact between the Montgomery Police Department and the District Attorney's Office, and that this liaison officer report directly to the mayor. The full ramifications of this report are not clear yet, but it appears that they will have far-reaching effect on the city of Montgomery, Police Department's operation, and the operations of the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at the Montgomery County Courthouse.
We would need to suspend the rules in order to consider what's your pleasure to council.
Mr. Mayor,
Montgomery Police Department. There were charges of misconduct made against certain members of the Montgomery Police Department. We are hopeful that the
Detail how we came to have the money.
This afternoon at 5:15, Mayor convened those officers whose names are mentioned here, along with some others, in the mayor's conference room, and read them this report and gave them an order that they would comply with the terms of this report, and gave them until Thursday afternoon at 5 p.m. to respond in writing to the mayor as to what their choice will be in this matter. Publicly, I want to thank the grand jury for being a dedicated group who was seeking the truth, who diligently sought the truth, and who diligently sought to bring an end to problems in the city of Montgomery between the police department and the district attorney's office.
1,556 dollars.
Excuse me, you have a copy of that to everybody?
Yes, sir. I do have a copy, and I'd like to
Let's pass those out while you read.
in the association, renting none of the vendors working in the,
All right, all those in favor of adopting the resolution, please signify by raising either hand.
in the association, renting none of the vendors working in.
Suspend the rules in order to consider this resolution at this time. Those in favor, suspend.
Council 641 section of the law, copies of the lease.
Basically, ladies and gentlemen of the council, this is
Mr. Neal, as the incoming president of the Chamber, what do you see as some of the problems that will face you this coming year?
The economy of Montgomery has always been a stable economy, and I think the stability will be continued. However, we will have some problems in the area of unemployment, retail sales, but I believe that on balance, 1977 will be a very satisfactory year.
Will the Chamber be able to do something specifically to help with unemployment?
We will try to continue to bring new industry to Montgomery, and that, of course, will help alleviate unemployment. Although I might add that Montgomery does not have an unemployment problem as great as many other cities in the country.
Montgomery has a great deal of potential, what with Union Station and the warehouse district and that sort of thing. Can you see any particular area that the Chamber will be working in?
The Chamber is going to be active in all of those areas, believe me, very active.
Will you be working in perhaps trying to bring in a hotel or motel into the downtown area?
We need one badly, and any way that we can help, we will endeavor to do so.
Be fine if you want to bring it, we'll be back Wednesday, Joe. The land's already deed.
Well, I think really they probably did the best that we could have anticipated under the circumstances we had last year. It certainly wasn't all we asked for and all that I think they would have liked to have given us, but it was a satisfactory effort on their part. This year, for the first time in the fiscal history of the state, we are submitting our budget request under a program budgeting format, which means we will ask for an amount which would enable us to continue at current level of services and a second amount which would enable us to expand. We're asking for $99 million under the extension of services at present level and $108 million under the expanded program concept.
That is an increase over last year's request?
The anticipated expenditures this year will be approximately $93 million. So to continue at current level, it would take another $6 million, which would almost all be involved in personnel cost and benefits and in the things that are associated with inflationary aspects of our operation.
Well, I responded out of a spirit of cooperation to the grand jury, and it was a part of their request, and I responded to it. I think we need to cooperate with their request.
Was it mentioned that it was not admissible in court?
Well, that's clearly obvious. Obvious unless both parties agree to it, it is not admissible. I think the grand jury certainly believe they understood that. But not that notwithstanding, they requested it, and out of spirit of total cooperation with them, we accepted their recommendation.
Another thing, Your Honor, the most glaring thing on the report was the absence of the district attorney's signature on the agreement. Do you have any idea as to why he would not sign it?
No, I think that you would probably need to ask that question of the DA. I think that Mr. Evans should answer that question for you.
Well, sir, now, does it mean that he is not bounded by the agreement and that he could prosecute some of the officers in these cases if he chose to do so?
Well, the grand jury presented an agreement that was worked out really with Mr. Foreman, myself, and Mr. Baxley, and I signed it. I signed it in good faith, and I'll leave that matter to Mr. Evans and to the grand jury.
The Celsius scale is new to the United States, but it has been widely used in other parts of the world for over 200 years. The Celsius scale is named after a Swedish astronomer, Anders Celsius. In 1742, Celsius suggested a thermometer with a range of 100 degrees between the fixed points of freezing and boiling. Later, the freezing point was established at 0 and the boiling point at 100 degrees. Today, the Celsius scale is almost universally used outside the United States.
The entire world, in fact, including Canada, now uses a Celsius scale. So what we're doing is getting in step with the rest of the world. Now, getting a little bit more specific, in the past several months or several years, you've heard an awfully lot about changing to the metric system, using centimeters, kilograms, meters per second for winds, and this is part of changing to the metric system.
This month, the eastern region of the National Weather Service began giving both Fahrenheit and Celsius temperature readings in their forecast. Next year, the dual readings will be issued throughout the United States. And in January 1979, less than 2 years away, the Weather Service will use Celsius temperatures exclusively.
Now, we've got about a 2-year educational process. We hope during this next 2 years that the public will become familiar with the Celsius scale. Now, on the 1st of January of 1979, we will drop the Fahrenheit temperature scale, switch to use only the Celsius scale. By then, we hope everyone will be familiar with it.
If Celsius readings confuse you, there is a simple formula to convert them into Fahrenheit. Multiply the Celsius reading by 9/5 and add 32. So a temperature of 5 degrees Celsius turns out to be 41 degrees Fahrenheit. The formula again to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit is Celsius times 9/5 plus 32 equals Fahrenheit.
Well, I think really they probably did the best that we could have anticipated under the circumstances we had last year. It certainly wasn't all we asked for and all that I think they would have liked to have given us, but it was a satisfactory effort on their part. This year, for the first time in the fiscal history of the state, we are submitting our budget request under a program budgeting format, which means we will ask for an amount which would enable us to continue at current level of services and a second amount which would enable us to expand. We're asking for $99 million under the extension of services at present level and $108 million under the expanded program concept.
That is an increase over last year's request?
The anticipated expenditures this year will be approximately $93 million. So to continue at current level, it would take another $6 million, which would almost all be involved in personnel cost and benefits and in the things that are associated with inflationary aspects of our operation.
As your governor, I want you to know that it is a serious matter. It is an emergency. And all of us working together by conservation and saving can make it possible that we will not have the loss of gas for the heating of homes, hospitals, and nursing homes, and that the people of Alabama will be getting back to work quicker. This is George Wallace.
We are making every effort to try to obtain supplies of so-called emergency gas, to obtain supplies from other pipeline companies. Some of it's on a loan basis that we have to pay back. We're doing everything we possibly can. We've been working with the Federal Power Commission, and we have had to instruct all of our customers that while we're allocating a certain quantity of gas to them on any given day, they have got to live within that allocation. We cannot jeopardize the whole pipeline system that serves the entire Southeast for any one customer. So this means that when we allocate a quantity of gas to a given distribution system, that distribution system has got to be prepared to get by with that quantity of gas. And that distribution system has got to have its own plans of emergency preparedness as to how it will adjust its loads, the customers it's serving, to live within that quantity of gas.
We have large LNG, liquid natural gas storage, and we have propane storage to a lesser degree. Our liquid natural cannot not be replaced except during the summertime, and it is being seriously depleted. Propane, while as a relative small part of the residential load, is being replaced. We've bought over 4 million gallons in the last 2 weeks, have ordered that much, hoping that it comes in and it will help us meet this crunch. We have, for a number of days, been on the air urging our customers to conserve. Unfortunately, our message isn't coming through. Maybe it's the way we've been giving it. But we cannot really see the effect of this conservation on behalf of our residential and small commercial customers. We urge them very strongly to conserve and to take this very seriously, because whether or not we will be able to continue to serve them as the winter dwells out into the late spring will depend altogether on how much we can save, how much our residential customers can conserve, which in turn lets us harbor or maintain our peak shaving capabilities.
The only thing I would add is this, that the weather prediction for the coming weekend is for extremely cold temperatures. Now, we at Alabama Gas feel that we can make it through this weekend all right, if we get the full cooperation from all the customers, and if you will do, as the governor has recommended, that you cut your thermostats to 65, and when you're not in the house, cut them to 55, and cut off rooms, cut the heat off to the rooms you're not using, and think of any way you can to save the use of gas for the coming days.
I don't know. I think with better leadership, they could, foreseen it coming. Looks to me like.
Are you keeping your thermostat turned down?
Yeah, when I'm not there. Or when we're there, I keep it turned up so I can stay warm. Plus, if you have children, young kids, you have to keep it up.
What do you think of the gas shortage?
Well, like he says, I think it's been a little better management. It could have been, should have been foreseen before now. They seen it coming. Should have been talking about it before now.
It's a problem. Everybody's got it. I don't know what they're going to do. It's the gas shortage is just like the problem with people's electric bills. We're short on everything.
You keeping your thermostat turned down?
Yeah, I am following that. I go in a lot of businesses every day, and it seems everybody's pretty much following along. Yeah.
I think it's contrived, like the gasoline shortage.
Are you cooperating with any of the things that the president and the mayor and the governor have asked people to do?
Trying to keep my bill down, yes.
Are you keeping your thermostat turned down?
Yes, I am. I'm doing everything possible to help the crisis.
What I just heard on the radio, it's getting worse all the time. I just heard out in the Midwest they're closing all businesses in some of those states. That just came through about 10 minutes ago. It's serious. A lot more serious than people understand, I think.
Are you cooperating?
Yes, we are. Sure. Well, I always have, because we always turn our furnace off at night and open the windows anyway. So we were cooperating long before this thing started.
Thank you.
Right. I think this is good, and I urge people to go along with what the gas people are telling them to get that, keep the thermostats down. The statistics prove that 5 degrees on your thermostat will really contribute to alleviating the shortage.
The district attorney made his statement in the Montgomery County grand jury room where the indictments were brought last year and where the agreement was hammered out.
There's been a lot of comments made concerning the absence of the district attorney's signature on the agreement which was worked out between the Attorney General, the mayor, and the president of the city council, Mr. Foreman. I didn't want to hold this press conference. I wanted to be quiet about everything and give this agreement a chance to work, because I certainly think it's time to get down to prosecuting criminals in Montgomery. We have been doing that. We'll continue to do it. I wanted to give this agreement an opportunity to work, and still do. But I think the people have a right to know why I did not sign the agreement. It was a matter of principle and a matter of conscience. And the reason I did not was because I was advised the agreement would not be signed by the mayor or Mr. Fallman unless there were provisions in the agreement which restricted the type questions which could be asked to the Director of Public Safety for the City of Montgomery, Mr. Wright, and the Chief of Police, Mr. Swindle. I'll read a pertinent paragraph in the letter to you. As a matter of conscience, please understand that I will not be a party to or be bound by any agreement between any persons which limits the scope of questions concerning the Whitehurst investigation, the gun plant incident, and the subsequent cover-up, which are to be propounded to Ed Wright and Charles Swindle or any other person. To be unable to ask them if they knew or came to know that the gun found by Bernard Whitehurst's body was ever at, near, or in police headquarters is unthinkable. I feel that they should undergo a polygraph examination just like the other police officers. This is really why I didn't sign the agreement. In my opinion, it was an admission that they could not be asked certain questions. Of course, the central inquiry of all the grand jury investigations into this matter has been, was that gun at police headquarters? And to be unable to ask them that question was just unthinkable to me. And I wanted everybody to know why I didn't sign it, and I think that concludes this matter.
Will you answer any questions, Mr. DA?
I'll try to.
At this point, in your opinion, what is the situation that exists between the Montgomery Police Department and the County District Attorney's Office?
Well, we're prosecuting cases up here in criminal court, and we'll continue to do so. And we're going to enforce the law, regardless of who he is or who they know or what their connections are, political or otherwise. And that's going to continue.
You did not sign the agreement. Will you consider prosecution in connection with the Whitehurst case?
Well, let me say this. The Attorney General, I wrote him a letter on July 22nd. And I asked him to take over these prosecutions because of personalities that were getting involved. And he has taken over the prosecutions and has taken action in that regard. And I'm not going to be saying anything about what he's done. And you'll have to talk to him about his reasons for the action he took. Now, prosecuting offenses in the future, of course, if there's a violation of law and this office or a grand jury finds it, then I'm going to take it for a grand jury, and I'm going to enforce the law. But I don't want to give people the impression that there's going to be any kind of retribution or anything like that. I want to see the police department work well. I want to see everybody get along. But you can't compromise with a violation of law, and you can't compromise with lawbreakers, no matter who they are. And I'm not going to be in a position of ever doing that. But I'm going to do everything I can to see that the relationship between the two agencies is a good relationship, and that we can all prosper in the cause that we set out for, and that's to prosecute criminals.
Shortly before the statement by District Attorney Evans, the cases against ex-detectives Kerner, Lideker, and Bush were dropped. The action comes approximately 9 months after the men were indicted and 4 days after the jury reported, which included the now controversial agreement. The next step is the results of a polygraph test scheduled to be taken by members of the Montgomery Police Department. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at the Montgomery County Courthouse.
As I stated, I would make a statement to you today at 5 o'clock. In accordance with my directive concerning the taking of polygraph tests as specified by my agreement with the Attorney General and the grand jury, the following actions were taken. Agreeing to the tests, Detective Charles M. Allen II, Captain G.L. Arnett, Detective C.H. Humphrey, Sergeant W.C. Segrist. Refused, Detective Richard Kerner, Detective Thomas E. Litica. Detectives Kerner and Litica have been fired. Resigned, Detective Don G. Johnson and Lieutenant Wesley Strain. Thank you very much.
Mary, question?
No, of course.
And there is the distinct possibility that in Alabama and several other states there may be gas shortages to the extent of being unable to heat homes, and therefore the health and safety of the people of this state and other states involved. And every contingency on the part of the gas people is being worked out to see that these dire emergency situations do not arise. But in view of the fact that there is always the possibility and probability that we could have an emergency of a sort that we've never faced in Alabama, we are making plans through the National Guard and also with civilian defense.
That supplies gas.
Well,
to
it
the
puts
state.
them in the situation where we have had to tell them that we're going to try to serve them their priority one allocations. Residential and small commercial. And we have had to tell them that in the event that we are short on gas supplies, we will curtail them by cutting back on the amount of this residential and small commercial allotment we allocate to them.
Mr. Lacey, where is the Alabama Gas Corporation in terms of being able to supply the people in this state through several more days of 20 degrees or below?
Well, in addition to the gas that we get from Southern Natural, we also have supplemental plants, both propane and liquid natural gas plants that give us additional gas. With the use of all of these, we feel that we can hang on here all right over the weekend. Now, the weekend is predicted to be very, very cold. Now, being able to do this depends entirely, I must emphasize entirely, upon our getting full cooperation with all of our residential customers. They have got to cut those thermostats down to 65 and down to 60 when they're not in the house. They've got to do everything they can think of to cut down their consumption of gas in the homes.
Mr. Allen, as foreman of the grand jury that issued the report and the agreement, there's been some controversy in some reports that Chief Swindle and Colonel Wright will not be asked questions about the gun found beside the body of Bernard Whitehurst. Can you clear that up for us?
That is not true.
They will be asked about the gun.
That's right. Well, I'll just confirm the previous interview you've had with Mr. Baxley, Attorney General.
Do you think the agreement in your report will clear up the controversy between those two agencies?
If everybody abides by it in good faith, I think it will.
Happy birthday, First Lady. Could you tell us how old you are?
Well, I have a hard time remembering, but I was born in 39.
1939?
So you'll have to figure that out.
Okay, were you surprised?
Yes, I was. Thought I was going to the Veterans Hospital to do a Bible study class with some of the patients out there. So I really didn't expect anything like this.
Well, how many more birthdays do you expect to have?
Well, I kind of would like to, kind of hoped I'd make 100 if I could.
Okay, you can turn right up here.
233. That'd be Montgomery Communications on Mountain X Road, 23 with 102. That's 10-4.
I'll be standing on here because this bridge is slipperier than it looks, and people are now slowing down out there. They're certainly break.
10-4. 320.
Close up now with the fan.
410-8. 10-4-64. Right over in front of Charlie's Lounge. On that bridge down to the crossroad exit, you got about... I'm trying to get that way. That's negative. All right. Go ahead. See if you can get it.
We do feel this will conserve some gas that's necessary for residential requirements in the state. Offices such as Civil Defense, the Governor's Office, and of course the Department of Public Safety will be open, those that affect the direct needs of the health and security of our people. But all state offices in Alabama will be closed on tomorrow, and then they will work 10 hours during the next 4 days.
Were there other factors besides the shortage of natural gas that worked into your decision today?
Well, the main reason was because of the shortage of natural gas. We're trying to conserve every bit that we can, and we still want to call on residential users to cut their thermostats to 65 in the daytime and 55 at night, because this will keep the homes from eventually running out of gas. And then since we have the prospects of cold weather for several weeks, it means that by conserving all these weeks, we will eventually get many people back to work. and there are approximately 35,000 or more people out of work in Alabama as a direct result of this severe winter.
Already this winter, the demand for energy has caused industrial plants across Alabama to close in an effort to conserve fuel for residential areas. Alabama's utilities are reported to be doing a number of things to be able to have enough fuel to heat homes in the state.
Norman, of course, the moderation of the weather has certainly helped our supply situation, but we are still critical. We urgently request all residential consumers, small commercial consumers, to conserve natural gas. We need the help of everyone. We are still critical, and we're a long ways from being out of the woods.
Is there enough gas to supply the people of this area and the rest of the state if you had several more snows like the one we had last night?
Well, the snow, of course, didn't get as cold as some of the other periods of cold that we've had. Temperature last night didn't get anything as cold as what we have had. We hope there will be no trouble serving the residential customer and small commercial, but we can't promise this. It's all going to depend on what the consumer does. If we get the conservation that we must have, we've got to get thermostats down to 65 during the day. We've got to get them 55 or lower at night. We encourage businesses where they can to have shorter work hours, do anything to conserve. It takes a conscientious effort on the part of all customers.
Do you have any idea when these large industries will be able to fire up again and begin to use gas again?
Norman, I wished I could answer that. Right now, we have given them another curtailment order to last another 30 days. Of course, the more conservation that we get from the residential consumer will in large let us get the industrial customers and the large commercial customers back on that much sooner. And of course, that means getting people back to their jobs.
Norman, the situation with Alabama Power Company is very good today. We have a capacity of around 6.25 million kW generation. Our demand at 11:15 today was about 4.5 million, so our reserves are adequate. We have put on one plant down at Chickasaw, Alabama, that has environmental problems connected with it because of the type of coal that's used on it. But we were asked to put that back into operation, and it did go on the line today. That was done primarily just to ensure adequate reserves for the state of Alabama.
You see no problem in terms of the Alabama Power Company being able to supply fuel?
That is correct. There are no problems as of the moment other than things that we cannot anticipate, but we see that we can take care of most of our problems, and I would say for this period of time that we're in very good shape.
Power company officials and state political figures are worried that some people won't heed the warning to conserve fuel. You should turn your thermostats to 65 during the daytime and lower than that during the night. Otherwise, they say, there is an outside possibility that some people in some areas of Alabama may have to move into places where there is a fuel supply. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting.
The funding of state prisons and the continued existence of some state agencies, Medicaid abuses, education, a revision of the state code, and a sweeping crime package are among some of the major issues facing the 1977 legislature. The lawmakers convene here at the Capitol tomorrow at noon, and then again at 6:30 when Governor George Wallace will make his State of the State address to a joint session. Wallace says all segments of education will be satisfied with the school budget included in his program. It provides for raises for teachers and other school personnel, as well as increases in funding for higher education, with the emphasis on medical personnel. Wallace has revealed a 10-point crime-fighting program and says problems with the state prisons should not deter the legislature from toughening criminal laws. Wallace is expected to ask the lawmakers to fund state prisons adequately. The sunset law that examines the functions of all state agencies may be among the biggest item providing filibuster material. The Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker of the House have publicly stated that the sunset law could kill the entire session. Last year, the legislature considered a lid law to hold down the tax increases stemming from a court-ordered property revaluation. The lawmakers may be able to work something out in this session. A utility program that would prohibit future consideration of construction plans from being considered in granting utility rate increases has the interest of the governor's office. The 1976 session of the legislature saw 735 bills introduced in the Senate and twice that number in the House. Of that number, 500 were passed by both houses. 80% of the bills enacted into law were of local application. As the lawmakers prepare to convene in this, the second annual session, a bill has been pre-filed to abolish the law of meeting each year and return to meeting every 2 years. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News, the state capitol.
House comes order. Callahan, Campbell, Carruthers, Carter, Hayes, Clark, Hoover, Henson. An affirmative action program that will ensure equal employment opportunities to all. Let's take the liberty party in the state of Alabama to implement the affirmative action program. They go on the taxes with the summer. There are no questions about moving the extension of the rules and immediate adoption of the rules. Next we are eight, Mr. Holmes, A, be it resolved. From our legislature, asking them to enter into the agreement to let the people of Alabama. We have a report that I think is very important. Upon which I am about to enter. To the best of my ability, so help me God. To the best of my ability, so help me God. Congratulations. Would you like to say something?
Well, George, I would rather feel like the best thing for me to do would be to sit here and listen and try to learn a whole lot rather than just jump up and down in front of the mic. But there is a resolution that I am going to introduce today, and that is a resolution that will request that the name of Highway 80 from Montgomery to the Mississippi line be changed to Walter C. Gavan Parkway. If we ever had a public servant who was working for the good of the people in his constituency in the state of Alabama for highways and for agriculture and for anything the good of the people, it was Walter C. Gavan. I don't believe his name is on a post. He served here in this legislature for 38 years. And most of the legislation that he either created or helped make was for the good of the people, either highways, agriculture, schools. And I just feel like that something should be named for the senator. And everybody in this August body so far has signed this resolution. So I think we will pass it here today.
Well, this is my first day, and I'm rather calm, and my most important thing is to get to know the other members of the Senate, and it's been a real enjoyable time this morning here, meeting the senators that I had not known before. I know most of them personally, and I feel very elated to be a great part of a part of this great body and elated to the people back home for sending me here to represent them.
I think the first thing is to try to meet, recognize, and identify as many of the fellow legislators as I can. Listen to what is going on in terms of procedures and mechanics. Develop some sense of community with the entire legislative body. And then from there, try to determine the course of action that probably I will pursue for the remainder of the legislative session. I feel very good. I've been welcomed by most of the members individually and developing some sort of rapport. And I think that as a freshman, this is the type of thing that you want to do and enjoy.
There are very few new items of significance facing the lawmakers. However, Governor Wallace has been known to drop a few surprises when he comes before the lawmakers, which he will do at 6:30 following the 6 o'clock report as he presents his State of the State address. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News, the state capitol.
How long the four-day work schedule remains in effect depends on the energy supply and weather conditions. Governor George Wallace is expected to make a decision based on those two factors by the end of the week. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News, reporting.
The confines of this investigation, and nobody's testimony that is living is beyond the reaches of this investigation.
Sprague said he may even seek testimony from President Ford, who served on the Warren Commission. Sprague, who said he's generally a pessimistic fellow, estimated it may take 2 years to complete the investigation. Ford Rowan, NBC News, Washington.
The New York City police calmed down today and began talking again about wages and hours. That came after 1,000 off-duty cops put on a wild demonstration last night and after Mayor Abraham Beame told them he wouldn't negotiate under the gun. David?
The New York State Lottery offers 2 prizes, cash and $2,500 worth of groceries. Today, New York City had its first grocery winner, Eduardo Augusta, 5 children and on welfare. He went to a supermarket and bought fig Newtons, pork chops, and canned spaghetti and meatballs. The so-called Irish potato was first discovered in South America by early Spanish explorers, taken back to Spain, then to Europe, and only then to North America. Well, now, with this year's drought in Europe, they are importing potatoes from North America for the first time in any quantity. Heather Bernard has been into the potato fields.
Long Island potato dealer Zach Schulman says he's never exported more than 2% of his potatoes to Europe. He says there's never been enough demand. But the summer drought in Europe changed all that. Europe went shopping for potatoes because it needed them, and the United States had a record potato harvest. Zach Schulman sold European countries half of all the potatoes he had.
Farmers this year have a tremendous crop, and the cost of productions are rising all the time. And this European business is the difference between a profit and loss for most of the farmers. The domestic demand is very slow, and with a huge surplus of potatoes in the whole country this year, the prices would have been very depressed and below cost of production.
The Agriculture Department says as much as 20% of the U.S. crop may be sold to Europe, but officials say it's highly unlikely that the large potato export will drive prices up here.
Supposing we shipped 25 or 30 million bags overseas, which we've never done before, even if we shipped that larger quantity, we still probably would see prices to growers lower than last year.
If the Agriculture Department is right, both Europe and the American farmer will benefit from an unusual coincidence. A shortage there, a surplus here. Heather Bernard, NBC News, New York.
And another item from the annals of crime. In Reno, Nevada, a man walked into a gambling casino, took out a pistol, and shot Patricia Mowry, a dealer at a blackjack table. She is recovering. It turned out he was furious because the dealer was his woman friend, and the day before she had had him arrested for puncturing her waterbed.
Wake up!
Who, me?
Wake up! Who, me? America, our diet is too rich in saturated fat.